Hey guys, this is X, and in today's video for Elder Scrolls Online for Beginners, I wanted to do something that I probably should have done a long time ago when I first started this series, and that's to show you how to get started playing ESO. But before I do any of that, I first want to mention that ESO is currently having a free play week. I think it started around April 11th, and I believe it goes all the way up to April 18th. So if you're one of those people that are still on the fence about this game, and you want to try it before you buy it, now would be a perfect opportunity to do so. Okay, so getting started, you're first obviously going to have to do your character generation. And as you can see, if you tap the L1 or R1, there's going to be a lot of options to choose from, that you can go into detail about, like, changing, each part of your body and what your character's gender is, and so on and so forth. If you want to, but if you want to skip all that and do a randomized character, because I know some people, they don't want to go through the whole process of doing that and would rather just jump straight in the game, which I can't say I blame them. Then you just hit square to randomize, and then you can go ahead and get started. But for those of you who actually want to go into the detail of how to do your character, this is how you do it. The first section starts is you want to do your gender. You can be, either male or female. Um, and the next part is the alliance. Now, when Elder Scrolls Online first started, uh, when you chose your alliance, you basically had to stay in your own alliance section. And while each section was pretty big, you were kind of restricted. You couldn't very well go over to the Aldermary Dominion side, for example, and do quests there. You had to basically stay in your own alliance area. Uh, with uh, with the one Tamriel, they lifted all those restrictions. So you might be asking, okay, well, what's the point of having the alliance now? Well, you could still do the alliance stories, but you could still go anywhere you want. Uh, and plus, when you're choosing the alliance, the really only thing that is really affected by it is PvP. Uh, but that's the only thing that it really matters. Anything else, it's not really a big issue. Then you want to play your race, choose your race rather. Um, Now, if you've played like any of the Elder Scrolls series, you should be pretty familiar with these races. But in case you're not, uh, when you highlight and just tap X to choose it, it will give like a brief description of what these characters are and what bonuses they might receive, due to their race. Um, Now, this isn't really necessarily set in stone, meaning some people have builds set around certain characters. So like if you're like a Breton, which is uh, which it says gives them bonuses of magic recovery and so on. Usually those are very good for sorcerer type characters. However, you don't really have to necessarily stick with that. I mean, that's you have the freedom to play whatever you want. You don't necessarily have to, because for me, I could have, I have a sorceress, but and I could have easily chose a Breton, but I'm like, it's my choice, so it may not be the best build, but I'm gonna do it the way I want to do it. So it's just however you want to do it. You can stick with, what it's said here, or just choose whatever you want to do. It doesn't really matter. But you have the Breton, you have the Red Guard, Orc, Argonian, Nord, your Dark Elf, your High Elf, Wood Elf, and lastly your Khajiit. So I think what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to go ahead and leave mine on Daggerfall Covenant as my alliance, and I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and choose, uh, let's say I'll choose a High Elf. Now, another thing I should note too is that originally when the game first came out, uh, you could only choose like certain races for certain alliances. For example, when you were in Daggerfall Covenant, you could only choose Briton, a Red Guard, and Orc. But when I first got this game, I got the edition where you could choose any race to go to any alliance. Now I'm not for sure currently how it is now. I'm not for sure if One Tamriel fixed it to where you could actually be any alliance or any race in any alliance. I'm not really 100% sure. Uh, but in case they didn't do that, just know if you want to play any race in any alliance, you have to choose like the special edition. And I think there's even also an Imperial edition where you can actually have an Imperial class as well. Um, Now, next, what you want to choose is your class. You have the Dragonite, which is basically your tank character. And what tank means essentially is you're kind of protecting your party when you're running around with other characters in a group, if you happen to do it. And most likely you'll have to do it at some point if you want to do like, the four-man dungeons and, trials and so on. They're the protectors of the group. They're the ones that absorb the damage because they're wearing the heavy armor and they're a little bit more beefier. Um, and while they do a fair amount, a pretty good amount of damage against monsters, their whole deal is to take the damage. That way, the other weaker characters don't get hit. The less, the characters that are not, uh, that don't have the armor, and the stamina and stuff to take that, kind of damage, and they kind of lead the monsters away from those other characters. Uh, but but a pretty good character to have nonetheless. Like I've have a Dragonite myself, and it's a really damn good character. You have some magic involved with it, but you can you could play it to where where you don't even really use that much magic. In fact, like when you're making your character, like I said before, it's however you want it. If you want, just think about what kind of character you want. Do you want the type of character that's that deals like in a lot of magic, or do you want a character that's like a Conan the Barbarian sort of character, which is mostly all swords, what have you, or maybe something in between, and it's just up to you. Um, but the next class is sorcerer. Those are traditionally a DPS character, though I've seen some people try to run them as a tank character, which I wouldn't recommend doing that, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But DPS means damage per second, and what that essentially means is you're inflicting as much damage as you possibly can at a target. Uh, they're not made to take like a lot of damage. That's the tank's job, but they do deal quite a bit of damage. Um, and of course, they deal. As the name implies, they deal with a lot, mostly magic. Uh, but what I was referring to earlier about watching what armor that you pick, I've seen some people try to put heavy armor on sorcerers, and I could kind of understand it because they're afraid that they might get maimed, or killed if they're not armored up. But the fact of the matter is that kind of works against you in a sense because heavy armor works well with a tank character because it gives you bonuses for a tank character. Now, for a sorcerer, for example, you'll want light armor because that gives you bonuses, pertaining to magic. So if you're wanting, to do strictly magic, it's always best to do light armor. Um, Now you have the third class is the Nightblade, um, and that is your basically your thief slash assassin type character. They traditionally wear medium armor, though you can technically wear any armor, much like the sorcerer or anybody like that. You can technically wear any armor, but but their main armor is the medium armor, and again, the reason you want to wear that is because you get certain benefits from that armor. So my recommendation, at least for beginner players, is to kind of stick with that. Um, and like the sorcerer, they are a DPS character. So occasionally you'll see them jump forward to kind of inflict a lot of damage, but then they'll jump back. It's kind of jumping back and forth, or there's some instances where you want to stay back and just pop shot enemies with a bow and arrow. Um, and the last character is the Templar, and this is traditionally your healing character. Now they can wear any armor, um, and I've seen actually people try to run them as tanks before, but they're generally known as a healing class, and those are good to have when you're going into dungeons with other people. Um, and I noticed that that's a class that not a lot of people tend to choose, which I never really understood that, because it's, to me, that's like your pretty much one of the cores of your group. To me, it's the tank and the Templar, uh, which is your healer, because if anybody's getting really damaged, especially the tank where he's getting, he's taking in all that damage, it's always good to have a healer there that can heal you right there on the spot and kind of take care of everybody, and you know throw down protection and healing and what have you. Just an essential part of the group. In fact, if I'm running a dungeon, I really generally don't like going in there without a healer. I mean, it is possible to go in there through a dungeon without one, but it's so difficult. It's just so much better to go in there when at least you have a healer uh, in the group. So what I'm going to go ahead is I'm going to go ahead and just make him a Templar. And another thing that I want to mention before I go even a little bit further than that, you can view your champion gear, which I'll probably do a section eventually on on champion points and so on. So further down the road, so be on the lookout for that. But if you tap R2, it'll give you a good impression of what your future armor, real good armor will look like. Um, but if you hit R2 again, you'll notice that your character is, for the most part, nude. And and trust me, there is a reason you'll want to do this. I mean, uh, and it's not some kind of weird perverted reason, but the reason that you want to do this is that if you have any sort of body markings, if you want to do details on your character's body, like if you want to have like let's say like scars on your body, um, or maybe body tattoos, you're obviously not going to be able to see it with clothes on. So the way I usually do is I just go ahead and have it stripped down to where it's mostly naked. That way, when I'm doing the more detailed work, I'll be able to see it. And of course, if you use your right analog stick, you can kind of turn your character around left or right. That way, you can look at scar placement in case you have something that you maybe placed on the back. You can go ahead, turn your character around to see how it looks. So if you tap R1, you can if you use your left analog stick, you can choose like how muscular you want it. Maybe you want it maybe a thinnish character. I'm just going to go ahead and have it somewhere maybe right down the middle, and then go ahead and hit R1 again, and you can just basically choose in more detail, like how tall you want your character to be. Like I'm going to make him really tall, or you can make whatever color you want. Maybe you want to make him lighter, darker, or however you want to have him. It doesn't really matter. It's just however you want to have it. And this is what I was talking about right here, the body marking. You want to choose, like, let's say, you can actually use your left directional pad to go back and forth on each section, or your directional pad, doesn't really matter. But as you can see, you can have like tattoos or scars. But if you want to bring your character up closer, if you just press up on your right analog stick. That way you'll be able to get a more, a better look at the detail that you're putting into your character. But I think I'm going to go ahead and stick kind of with, see if I can get them like maybe some other kind of, oh, there it is. Yeah, as you can see, there's quite a large, actually quite a large selection to choose from. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. Looks like it kind of looks like he's just been through absolute hell. Um, but you can change like the just more details. Like you can change like the gut size and the waist size and so on and so forth. Um, and of course, you have the head type, which I'm going to go ahead and make it a more kind of a more angular type. And then change the age where he just looks a little bit older. And then you can change something like a dormants where you can do like some facial features or maybe beards or just however you want to have it. But I'm not going to go into too much detail because this is just purely an example. I think that's about all I'm going to do actually on that. And then what you want to do is you want to just go ahead and when you're finally satisfied with what you've got, I'm going to go ahead and put his clothes back on, and then go ahead and hit finish. And of course, it's going to ask you for your name, which I'm going to go ahead and put one down. Which you Indiana Jones fans should know what know what this name is. And then you just type in done. And if you, of course, I've already played it, so I don't have to go through like the tutorial, which is the Wailing Prison is basically a tutorial. But I'm going to go ahead and go through that just to kind of give you at least a little bit of a taste of what to expect. So I'm going to go ahead and play it instead of skipping it. Okay, so here we are right now. I'm only going to go through a little bit of this because I don't want to spoil it too much, but you actually start out in a prison. Now you have the option of either going in third-person view, or if you hit down on the directional pad, you go to first-person view. I tend to want to do the third-person because it's easier to see people sneaking up on you that way, so I just typically leave it on that. And here in a minute we're going to see somebody
Are you all right?
come in there to free you.
The name's Lyris. I hope you've still got some fight left in you. You're going to need it. Dead. Must have been the runt of the litter.
And of course it shows you to press X to loot objects in the world. So I'm going to go ahead and search this body. On a side note, if you're a no matter what character you're running, if you're a sorcerer or what have you, you're going to start out
Keep moving. There are more Daedra on the way.
with a two-handed weapon. But I wouldn't worry too much about it because this is just simply a tutorial. Because you might be thinking, oh man, I'm gonna have to do this kind of weapon. I wanted to do magic at first, but don't worry, you'll get to the magic part, later on. So this is just to show you, just basic gameplay. So, so don't worry too much about it. But anyway, that's all I wanted to show you guys for today. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and please subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I hope to talk to you guys real soon. Take care.